Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Wolf Driver coming to you live once again. I'm at New Style Independent Studios. We're doing my VODCast podcast. Got some interesting footage today for you. Always, I wouldn't let you down. Let me just get it playing. So, playing on the screen above me, below me, everywhere in between, depending where you're watching this, is one of our latest epic adventures where we're down in Baltimore's Inner Harbor, Baltimore, Maryland, and we do about a 3.5 mile run through the city. And there's some really historic areas like Federal Hill. We went to Fort McHenry, which is on another video, and all through cobblestone streets, kind of, and climbing different areas that are along the waterway where there were ships. Actually, we ran into one of the supposedly the only remaining ship, whatever this means, from Pearl Harbor. So a lot of cool stuff. Dogs are really amped up. They're fired up. It's really cold because there's a big wind chill. So it's not like Arctic temperatures, though it felt that way to us because of the wind coming off the water. And it was just, I think there were over 40-mile-per-hour gusts. And you can see my flag is waving in the wind when we're out in the open area. And you can see the dogs just loving it like they have a built-in air conditioner. So I live in Maryland, and I'm only about 20 minutes from the Inner Harbor, and I grew up in Baltimore, basically, or out right on the outskirts. So believe it or not, I've never really mushed the dogs here before, and we thought this would be really a great place to do it because it's just so scenic, and it takes a lot to do it in this area because there's a lot of traffic. There's just so many people. It's a safe area in the sense that we're relatively sheltered from the traffic, though we do cross a couple of city streets, which can get busy with all kinds of vehicles, from big trucks to mopeds. So I knew by having a large crew with me, I'm talking about almost 10 people, that we would be able to do this safely and really enjoy the scenery, not be too stressed out from the different areas. The dogs are never stressed out in something like this. They're just like people. They're huskies again, so they're very personable. They love being around people, and people have dogs. A lot of people down there, so a lot of people all over have dogs. So when we get to the Federal Hill part, you'll see us going past a lot of people with dogs, and the dogs get excited by that. They love all the scents, the smells they get from the dogs being in those areas, etc. So really, one of my most epic adventures, and you can see the wind howling here. I mean, that flag is just going crazy. We did this because we're shooting a pilot, which we hope might get on one of the big networks. And that would actually bring me more into people's homes. And again, one of my biggest goals is to share my knowledge and what I've learned over 30 plus years. So it's all about the betterment of all dogs, because almost all dogs can do this in some capacity, and it's a healthy kind of exercise. My dogs here don't have to pull, though they are pulling here, because the bike is propelled by a motor, which is optional, which I can use accordingly. And actually, on this particular episode, believe it or not, my motor, because we're doing so much, as I mentioned, one of the cables came undone, and it didn't matter because I didn't have any motor power, and I wasn't going to get off and dissect it because we're in the heart of everything, all this traffic. People. It wasn't a super busy day, but it's still, when it's not busy, it's still a lot of people and cars there, etc. But because of that incident, because of that, I wasn't sure actually the throttle cable came undone. I didn't know right then and there, so I actually was fine because the dogs were propelling us. But when we got to hills, the dogs are used to me using my sport. I call it dog moto sports. And they're used to me just hitting the throttle and go. And they were looking back at me like, Dad, we need a little assistance. So in that position, that's how a musher assists his team, whether they're out on the Arctic tundra, wherever they may be. The musher's usually on back of the sled, and he kicks the ground and propels it. So dog motorsports is, instead of me being a full-time musher, as I'm getting too old to do it, I can hit the throttle and give the dogs all the assistance they need. Without the motor in this situation, that's why I got a team. They were actually just giving us a little. Once you get the dog started, it's the momentum because we're mushing on a dog sled on wheels, essentially. The wheels, once they get going, even going uphill, they get a little bit of momentum. They can usually take it. They usually don't need more than a little push. And my team was supplying that until we got to a place where I could really assess it and realize it's the throttle cable, and I was able to address it. By the way, we are live right now. If you're watching live, please leave me any comments, questions, concerns, whatever the case may be. I love addressing them, and this is how we can better the community, because everybody can ask questions they might have, concerns, how they can do this, how they can exercise their dog, whatever the case may be, and or maybe say they don't like something the way I'm doing it, or they have some advice for me, whatever it is. I'm always happy to entertain these questions, comments, concerns, etc. So you can see Baltimore City is really beautiful, and living in the area, you get kind of jaded. You don't realize how cool it is. And that's why I have a Wolf Driver pit crew. A lot of people say, you don't need a pit crew. You don't have a pit crew. Well, actually, to do the kind of adventuring that I want to do, I really need a team. And especially as I get older, I'd rather spend my energy taking care of the dogs, tending to them, and finding places we can adventure and do this. So the team just helps me expand my reach, basically, and my entertainment factor for my dogs. So one of the guys who we call Shawman, and he is located in Southern Virginia. He been with me for years, good friend of mine, and he does a lot of my technical work, helps me keep all the footage I get and all the memories I have organized and in areas and ways I can process it properly and archive it. So he's an outdoorsman too. He likes to hit all kinds of trails. So he actually scoped this area out, or surveyed it before we went there the day before. We had realized what we wanted to do, and because it's so basically, how can I say it? It's so questionable whether, can a dog sled on wheels go right through the heart of Baltimore City? We had to do some reconnaissance, and he had to go there, check the area out, and he actually ran it on a scooter to make sure we were going to be legal and make sure we were going to be safe. Most importantly, the dogs were going to have a good time. So he did that the day before, and we put this all together. On site, we had a professional photographer, we had videographers, I had all my team keeping me behind me and in front of me, to the side, just making sure everything was as good as can be, and it turned out to be epic. So we started off the day at Fort McHenry, and because of time constraints, I'm not able to broadcast that video, but you'll see it all on my channels, all social media. You'll see more excerpts from it with like Facebook Reels, TikTok shorts, whatever they call them, TikTok videos, where I don't post usually my long ones. YouTube's always the complete story, the complete video. This was filmed from basically my chest, where I wear a specialized harness where my iPhone actually sits there and records the whole adventure. And I try to do it from start to finish. So you get a little bit behind the scenes, me harnessing the dogs up, me finishing up, us finishing up and putting the dogs back in the van, watering throughout, all the situations we run into, the cable coming loose from the throttle, everything, reactions, which are quite fun to see, and all the smiles we put on people's faces. Actually, we ran into a group of children that were at the National Aquarium. We have a huge National Aquarium here in Maryland, and they were just, oh my gosh, they were going crazy, running all over. They couldn't believe what they were seeing, and the way they express themselves is so cool that it was cool. They were cheering, they were a lot of hemming and hawing, and just enjoying the show. So, and that's what it's about. So, from this harbor trot, from this harbor mush, I should say. By the way, for Baltimore, in Baltimore, we have something called the Charm City Run. I've actually started on one of my dog sleds on wheels. Actually did a preliminary lap before they did their run years ago for one of our local shelters. We're sponsoring it, and Baltimore City Charm City Runs was involved. So I've got some, and that was at Patterson Park, which is another big area in the city where there's a huge dog park, and it's just a old, historic, cool park a lot of people go to. So for shooting our pilot video that I mentioned, within the next couple of days, we did a shoot that we're calling them Little Wolf Drivers, and it was educating children. Actually, we ran into children, as I said, down in the harbor, and this was educating children about dogs. I had a small group of children that I was talking to them about sled dogs and about taking care of dogs, and each one got a ride in one of my electric dog sleds on wheels, actually in the Swin car, which is kind of like an off-road electric vehicle. I chose the Swin car because it's comfortable for the children, and the dogs are on the side of it, so the children could really get to interact with the dogs and really see them up close and personal, which is really exciting for them. And they learn a little bit of how they run, and when I give commands, how I talk to the dogs, and I explained that before we went out. So that was kind of epic. They were really enjoying themselves, epic for them. And it was good for the dogs around the children. Actually, Nikita, so she's my front dog on my right as I'm sitting in the electric dog sled on wheels. Nikita is actually the cocoa colored husky. She's an Agality. She got the no mask on her face, just like what they call a dirty face. And she went to the children when I took her out of the van to load her up on the Swin car, and she just rolled over on her back and let them all pet her. It was probably one of the cutest things you'll see all day. It was just really nice. Inyo and Lola, really good. They're all really good with children. They were good. They walked past and got to pet them. Cyan, I kept a little further back because Cyan's just so excited, and she's the youngest, and she just wants to jump, and she doesn't realize how big she is. So I didn't want her knocking everybody over, even though they were sitting at the time. She'll just jump in their lap and say, "Pet me, please. I love you." So she's very friendly, very lovable, but she's a lot of dog. And when she's on the dog cart, like we were on the Swin car, she wants to inspect all the children as they come in. So had a little bit of a tough time keeping her forward when we were loading the children up, because she just wanted to touch them and be part of them, and all good natured. And the children had all been around dogs. Some of them were pretty young, but they've all been around dogs, so they weren't intimidated by them. And of course, these dogs are very friendly. As I said, they're not growling. They're not taking any kind of intimidating posture. But it was truly epic with the children in the harbor. By the way, which I didn't mention, and unfortunately you're not going to get a full view of it until we water the dogs and I step out. This was a tandem design of one of my electric dog sleds on wheels. So I talked about the Swin car having 2 seats. This bike, you could actually put as many together as you want. And by putting them together, you can make a whole train of them, for lack of a better description. These are all propelled by the motor on the front of my lead electric dog sled on wheels, and by the dogs. So in this case, the dogs, when they were engaged, when they were doing the propulsion, they were actually pulling 2 people and 2 bikes, but the bikes are super light. And I'm not the lightest guy in the world, but my passenger, who was one of the videographers, he's not as big as me. It doesn't matter, because we're talking the dogs here. Each dog can comfortably pull about 150 pounds, about 3 times their own body weight. They're roughly 50 pounds each dog, so 600 pounds. And we were probably, when it's all said and done, we were probably 400 pounds, maybe a little more, but still, and that's comfortably pulled. They could probably pull a lot more because these dogs are in shape, and they're conditioned, and they're sled dogs, so they're used to that. So 150 is a conservative estimate, but it was really a totally cool experience. So people say to me, "Well, Wolf Driver, why do you go to all these locations? Why not just do the trail beside my house?" And it's all about building a bond with the dogs to experience aspects with them that I probably wouldn't experience without all this travel. I definitely wouldn't. And giving them some mind entertainment, some psychological enrichment by taking in all the different smells, different areas, different animals or wild animals will be prevalent in. Different areas might have more or less dogs. Different areas, they'll have climbing. They'll have hills to navigate up and down. Different areas will be curvy. I mean, there's just so much that we take for granted when we don't expand our horizons and go to other areas to travel. So a little extreme, but some people live in the city, and this is the area they have, and then some people aren't going to travel. They don't have the time. They don't have the resources to do like I'm doing. So, but there's different places in the city. There's different places around my house in the county. There's different places wherever you live that you could probably find, and without traveling too far, pack up your things. Maybe you could bike over to there, or you could get in the car, whatever the means may be. A lot of this equipment is compact and will fold and can be broken down for easier travel. So I'm just saying, and by the way, people say, well, why do you let your dogs pee and step in their own urine or pee? And that's not that. That's water. We actually will spray their pads down certain times, even though it's cold to us. The dogs can use, they're stepping in the water bowls there actually. They will use different methods, but they sweat from their pads. So by submerging their pads or getting them wet helps dissipate some of the heat to keep them cool. So they're not standing in their own pee. Please don't think that. But I mean, it does happen. Sometimes they'll stop and pee, and I usually try to pull them forward because they don't want to be standing there. Just so when we're taking a break, so they're not standing there. But sled dogs will learn. Not all of them, and the way I mush them, definitely not all of them, but some will learn to go to the bathroom on the run, and it's perfectly fine for them. But if you can imagine a musher with 9 dogs or bigger team going around and stopping for each dog, you can't tell necessarily when they're going to go. With 4 dogs, I can usually get a clue when they're going to go, but so they just learn to go on the run. Some of my dogs, I don't even know when they're going to the bathroom. That's why when we're on some of these trails, I've got someone riding behind me so they can see, so they can clean it up. So we're respectful and considerate of all trail users. So the flag there is my dog motorsports flag. The reason I have that is because I want to be seen. Not only, my logo, yeah, that's nice, but you can be seen because we're low down. So we've got a couple questions. My producer just let me know. I'm going to address those, and I thank you for the questions. So I've got to put my glasses on so I can see better here. So we've got from Cheryl Kovanek. Great to see you, Cheryl. Thanks so much for tuning in. Lots of laughs. I'd be one of those kids. Great filming. Mini wolf drivers. There you go. Are you going to start giving rides? They're all strong girls. Carry on. So, it's funny because when I started this, I really tried to stay behind the scenes. When I started wolf driving many years ago, 30 years ago, I kind of wanted to stay behind the scenes because I'm an outgoing person, but I kind of just wanted to do my own thing. And I was learning a lot then with the dogs. I teach myself a lot of this, so I didn't know what was going on. So I kind of kept low profile, and I wasn't as familiar with the dogs. I didn't know how they'd be around people, children, etc. So I didn't want to expose them to a situation where someone pulling on their tail and the dog gets a little aggressive, or the dog just, the personality, I didn't know him as well and didn't understand the body posture, wasn't happy being around certain people, maybe, and I would not want to expose others to that. So as, fast forward 30 years later, I actually understand all the body posture. I understand dogs, what's going on, and I've been doing this so long, it's second nature, so I can spend the time giving people more attention and letting the dogs do their thing and understanding what the dogs are happy about, what's going on, and also understanding all my dogs. So this gives me now this freedom where I can take other people that come close by and let them meet the dogs and let them possibly experience the ride. So this was set up, these dog rides. I love to teach people, especially young people, about dogs. So when they grow up, they can give a dog a good life. Hopefully they can have a dog as part of their family. And if they start young and we can get the proper information to them, and they can learn respect and understanding of other animals, I think it can be beneficial to the betterment of all dogs and all animals. So yes, when I can do something like that, I'd like to take the opportunity. You can see Cyan stepping up there because when we stop, she wants to go, and they all want to go, especially when the wind's whipping for the most part. So I have to try to control the situation. Even today, with my experience, it's hard to contain all that energy. Thanks, Cheryl, so much for the question. So we've got another one here, and from Karen Wally DeGraff. Great to see you, Karen. Thanks so much for tuning in. Do you know why most dogs running Iditarod recently are not full-blooded Huskies and many seem to have no thick fur? So, yes, Karen's asking that did I know and do others know that sled dogs today are not full Huskies. Almost none of them are. So what they do, what mushers do, they mix almost all breeds. A lot of times you'll see these dogs with coats on, actually. They don't have thick fur, like Karen says, because they'll actually wear a coat to keep the dog warmer because they're short-haired dogs. Because of all the mix, they're mutts, basically. Of all the mix, they take the best traits of each dog they can get, depending on what position they're looking to fill in the team, and breed for that particular instance. So you'll get a lot of breeds, again, a lot of mix of breeds to make the best sled dog. So when I say sled dogs, yeah, the Huskies today are really not sled dogs, even though these sled dog breeds from long ago that were sled dogs have the traits in them. Not all of them do, but a lot of them have the traits in them that give them the natural instinct to pull, to run, and this insatiable appetite for exercise. But all these mixed breeds, and when I went on a sled dog tour when I'd been doing running dogs probably for 5 years, I think, maybe a little more, and I wanted to experience, so we went to Banff, Canada, which is far inside of Canada. I think it's on the western, not the edge of Canada, but it's pretty far north. And there's a lot of dog sledding there. So we went on a tour, and I learned, I'm like, wait, these aren't Huskies. And I had known some of that, but I really got to experience all the different breeds. And they were wonderful dogs. They were just enjoying themselves, having a ball. These dogs did all have a good coat that they didn't need any kind of clothing on them, except for booties. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that, Karen, because a lot of people don't realize that. And when I talk about it, I often talk about it that certain breeds are sled dogs. But again, I'm talking for many years ago. Today, the conglomerate of all these dogs taking the best of all the traits and mixing them together and getting the most finely tuned sled dog you can. That's what it's all about today. So thanks so much for mentioning that. Appreciate it. Any more, Rod?
No.
Okay. So thanks for the great questions, Karen and Cheryl, and I always appreciate it. So today, what you see are my Huskies, and this would be a more traditional from back in the day sled dog team. But right now, I believe we're climbing Federal Hill. So Federal Hill, I don't really know the history. It's a real historical area, and I'm not sure, considering that Fort McHenry, where Francis Scott Key wrote the Star-Spangled Banner of the USA, and it's a fort that was protecting the harbor, and that is incredible looking and incredible to experience. I've been inside. When we mushed there last week, from when we did the Baltimore City also, we mushed the outskirts of it. So Federal Hill is a climb. It's a hill like it says. And when you get to the top of it, you get a beautiful panoramic view of the city. So you can see some of the stadiums here where the Baltimore Ravens play. I know if you're not from here, you're like, boo, Baltimore Ravens. But they're a big part of our city here now. It used to be, when I was growing up, the Baltimore Colts, but I'm showing my age there. And all view of the harbor. It's incredible. So you'll see some of that footage from my perspective from this camera. So we've got another question that I'm going to check out. And from here, Damon, what's up, Bill? So Damon is actually one of the videographers and part of Rod's team, who's my producer, who I've been doing all my video stuff with for years. And we've actually made this documentary that I've mentioned many a times. We hope to get it out there to the public. Remember, dogdocumentary.com. You can see that. And Damon's a big part of that. Actually, Damon starred in some of my videos, some of my music videos. So if you don't know, I've written over 100 songs all about dogs, adventuring with dogs, sled dogs, all about what I do, training, etc. And I've had professional musicians turn them into songs. I wrote it, and they turned them into the music part, sing them, etc. So I had some of them made as rap music, and Damon was rapping them. So pretty cool stuff. Thanks, Damon. And I appreciate your hard work over the past week, all the time, whenever you do stuff for us. So we got another question.
This one is actually on Instagram
Okay.
from Murky. And he says, what about other dogs? When you pass them by, do they or the other or your dog, do they want to attack each other?
So Murky, I hope I'm saying that right, from Instagram has asked, great question. What about other dogs? And that is always, and people that have other dogs that want to do similar to what I do, or just want to walk their dog, they're always concerned about other dogs. What happens if I run into another dog? Is me restricting my dog on a leash, if the dog's off leash, going to be a problem? Because it's has an impact on the dog being restrained while another dog off leash comes to it, or even if that dog's on leash, they still feel restrained, and maybe they'll come out of their personality or used to your dog being friendly. Maybe they'll get more aggressive, etc. So there's always that element of surprise and always that question. And my biggest concern is running into dogs off leash. Usually people that have other dogs can control their dogs. So I am not with my dogs. They're totally contained. That's why the whole design of the electric dog sled on wheels keeps a narrow footprint, keeps the dogs inside of their respective roll cages, if you will, U-bars, and keeps them from getting into somebody else's lane, into another dog's distance, striking distance, reaching distance. So what I've had, my dogs are almost never an aggressive posture. They might sound aggressive, but they're not really reactive per se. When we pass another dog that may be reactive, it'll stir them up a little bit. I'll give them the command, which isn't always foolproof. Hey, easy, depending on what the other dog is doing. So it's on an individual basis. As long as people, and this is just like they keep them on the proper leash and keep them out of our lane, it's fine. My dogs aren't going to go into somebody else's lane. But people don't realize how excited other dogs get when they see us. Excited or in a defensive posture, whatever it may be. So I've actually had many situations where I've come into other people that can't handle their dogs. Some of these are big dogs, and they'll pull people to me, essentially. So because of my knowledge, my training, my experience, I've never had a mouth-on-mouth confrontation, even though other dogs have gotten into my dog's face. This is the reason, again, we carry walkie-talkies. I travel with the team. Hey, there's a loose dog up here, wolf driver. So I say, okay, I'll stop. Can you identify an owner and ask them to put it on a leash or put it by their side, whatever they do, to let them know we're coming through with a team of dogs. Other dogs get excited because this looks like a party. So I got 4 dogs coming through, and they're running, they're doing their thing, and it looks like a party to these dogs. So they want to be a part of it. Some dogs do get in a defensive posture because they think they need to protect their owner, their territory, whatever the case may be, and they might become aggressive. So I always carry what I call like a cinch or a lasso leash, where I don't have to put my hand on the dog. I can kind of just throw it around a loose dog's collar, a loose dog's neck, and I can get control of that dog, so I can either hold it for the owner or try to put it in the appropriate area, try to get a hold of the people, somebody to tend to the dog. Sometimes, and I've had this happen, I've had little dogs chase us up a trail, and I've had my co-pilot actually have to get the little dog. They so small, puts them in their arms to take them back to their owner, because usually when we go past houses, people don't expect how excited their dogs are going to get, and they will charge us, especially little dogs. And I've had that happen where they've gotten the little dog, my co-pilot, taking them back to the people. Like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Probably not the first time it happened to those people. But yeah, luckily we've never had any instances, though I've had close calls. But my dogs, me getting a hold of another dog, etc. One time, which was probably the most the closest to catastrophe, was when somebody had a dog off leash. I think it was a pit bull, and all dogs are great. It depends on the owner, it depends on what happens, etc. So this dog was coming at us, and the guy was drunk, and he was definitely drunk. He had no control. He's like, "I'm sorry," and he's stumbling all over the trail. Dog was back. So my co-pilot jumped off. These are what my guys do. I was riding a tandem bike. My co-pilot was in the backseat, jumped off, charged at the dog. So like bears, you make yourself look bigger than they are. This is what some people will say, by opening your arms, making yourself appear bigger, charging at the dog, because this co-pilot of mine was a dog handler. He's familiar with dogs, raised with dogs, charged at the dog and was able to get control of the dog before the dog reached my dogs. He had a lasso leash on him, put and hold him until I got by. And I mean, I got by a quarter of a mile or better, walkie-talkie to each other. "Bill, how far are you? I'm going to let the dog go now. He seems to be sticking with his owner." And we were able to go. And the guy kept thanking us. Sorry. So that was probably, when you're dealing with someone that's not coherent because they're drunk under the influence, and they got a dog, a possible dangerous dog off leash, all bets are off. But because we knew what we were doing, we were able to handle that predicament. One other time I'll tell you, because I have to mention it. When we go past people, again, their dogs get excited. We saw a big dog with a smaller person, and the dog was walking that person. And my co-pilot said to me, or I told him, "Hey, I think you might want to go and check out the person up there, because she doesn't look like she's got control of her dog, and that dog could overtake her." I gotta make assumptions. I gotta prepare for the worst. So he went up to her very kindly and said, "Hey man, we're coming through with a lot of dogs here, and they're really excited, and we were just wanted to know, would you like some help with your dog?" And she gladly gave my co-pilot her dog's leash, and I was able to go by, and the dog did get excited, but because he was strong and physically capable of handling the dog, he just held the dog, was fine, and we went right through. So everything can happen out there. One of my favorite lines is "expect the unexpected," and that's what happens when we're out there. So great question. Thank you so much for asking. I appreciate it. So picking up the phone here to see where we're at. So we're on Federal Hill. We made 2 laps up there. So Federal Hill, again, was epic. And just watch the video if you can. We've got another question my producers let me know. So from Will P. Also, I think people feel like they don't have to train their little dogs as much. Funny you should say that. So Will was saying that with the little dog, I was talking about the little dog scenario where little dog came right out and chased us up the trail, and we were able to pick up the little dog and bring him back to the owners. I have a little dog, so I was never a little dog kind of guy, and I've always been into the big dogs, the Huskies, Malamutes, Northern breeds, and my stepdaughter and wife brought home a little dog. I'm like, what are you doing with this? I mean, a little dog, a toy breed, Chinese crested. And they're like, "Oh, we fell in love with this dog." And I'm like, "I got sled dogs. What do you do with that dog?" So like, this is my stepdaughter's, and this is my wife's dog. So I'm like, okay. So I was like, I just, loved all dogs, but I wasn't a little dog guy. And so I didn't have a lot of interaction with it. They were always out with it doing their thing. One day I'm laying on my sofa, and the little dog jumps up on my neck and just curls up. And I'm like, she's like a heating pad, and she's about the sweetest thing I've seen since sliced bread or sliced chocolate bars. She was just amazing. And I fell in love with her, and that was Lulu. And that's another dog generation ago. We've got another Chinese Crested now, Gigi. So Chinese Cresteds, they range in size. They can be as small as Lulu. She was like 6 or 7 pounds, full grown. Our latest Crested, she's a little overweight, probably more of 18 or 19 pounds now. Some of them, ours have been what they call hairy hairless, where they have hair just on their paws and on their mane. They actually look like mini ponies. They're pretty wild looking. Actually, at one point they were voted, I think, America's ugliest dog. But they're so ugly, they're cute. Actually, I adore ours. I think I think they're all so cute. I fell in love with the breed. She can do some dog motorsports. I mean, she's a real go-getter, the current Chinese Crested we have now, Gigi. So you put her on the bike that I specially designed for her to be part of the husky team, and she's gotten on there and she's run around the neighborhood. Started off with just training her, then she got between the huskies and she loved it, but she likes it more when my wife's in front because she's got something to run for. So that just proves that almost all dogs can do this, even a toy breed, and they're not propelling the vehicle. That's why it's totally different than what they call joring sports, which are mushing sports, essentially, like bike joring, ski joring, traditional dog sledding, etc. Dog motorsports is a lot different than that, though it can be, I call it push to mush, because they're actually pushing the vehicle if we're in a vehicle and if the dog can pull push. So thanks so much for the great question. I appreciate that. Got another question here. So from Damon Hull again. Damon, what are some of the emergency precautions you take if one of the huskies are injured on a trail? Great question, Damon. Thank you for asking. So that's the big thing. The safety of the dogs is always most important. And because we don't know what we're going to run into, it's one thing if we're doing a local trail and you kind of have a lay of the land and you know a lot of the people on the trail, which was the case I did for many years. When you're going to uncharted territory, a trail could have a closure on it, a detour, might have to ride out on a big road. There could be in a parking lot broken glass. So anything can happen. And it's one thing if one of us gets injured, we can say, wow, my ankle's injured, I can't walk, or I cut myself, I need a Band-Aid, whatever the case may be. With a dog, they can't tell you actually what's wrong with them, exactly what's wrong with them. So when you see them limping, God forbid, you've got to make the determination. Is this just, a cramp? Or did they step on something? Did they twist something? Is it further up their body? Is it fatigue? So you got to be like almost a veterinarian instantly. And the dogs with me, because I'm like, I understand the ramifications if a dog continues to exercise or put pressure on something they might have tweaked. Or, if they stepped on something and you keep running on that, pushing it further into their paw pad, etc. So through my experience and knowledge, I've been able to stave off any kind of injury, basically. And we always carry a first aid dog kit with us because if the dog's bleeding, dogs will bleed from their nail sometimes just because it's grind it down too far, because either they've drug it too far, the terrain was too rough, or they had an incident, something happened. So that looks like somebody got shot and killed, God forbid, a million times. But when the dog bleeds from the nail, because there's a bloodline in there, and that's sometimes hard to. It'll stop on its own, but there's different products you can carry to kind of get it to cauter, whatever they call that, to get it to stop bleeding. But if the dog is bleeding from another area where it could lose a lot of blood, you want to put, I guess, a tourniquet on there and stop the blood from going there to keep it them from bleeding out, God forbid. So before you can get to a veterinarian, etc. So what I do is carry this first aid dog kit. I'm constantly inspecting my dogs to look for something minor before it turns into something major. I can say that I've never had an emergency visit on any of my dog adventures where we travel. So I used to try to look up what would be the closest veterinarian clinic. But the problem with that is we're usually running until after most places would close. There are 24-hour places. They're usually in bigger towns, and we're sometimes so remote. So I've got to take everything into consideration. So if I'm even remotely concerned about a dog, I'll stop running that dog or maybe the whole team. If it's something I think I can use a booty, and it's just something minor the dog can keep running, because the dogs will work through injury. But again, if you take that chance, you can further damage them. So just because they can handle it sometimes is not always good advice to keep going. I'll tell you a real quick incident that happened to me. Dogs were off leash. We were free ranging one of the farms, another generation of huskies, and we're just having a ball. Everything's great. All of a sudden, my dog starts limping. Zorro, big husky Malamute. And I'm like, what the heck's wrong with him? Why is he limping? Like, he's not pulling anything. We were just strolling through the fields. So immediately like I said, address everything immediately. Don't think it's going to go away on its own. Don't think it's just, a figment of your imagination. Check it out. I look, there's a thorn in his pad. And I'm like, gee, because there were thorns. There were I guess there were sticker bushes or thorn trees, actually. This one place in Virginia we go. They are around there, but I didn't think that they'd be on the ground. I thought they were just in the trees. And when I looked, there was no blood there. So we could see it wasn't hurting him per se. He just couldn't step on it. So I pulled it out. Just real quickly, no blood came out. He was 100% fine. I mean, that sucker seemed to be pretty big, that thorn, from what I remember. So it could be something as simple as that. And then I continued to watch him. Was it going to bleed after? Because I noticed with dogs, because their fur so thick on their pads, they don't have fur per se. But sometimes they'll get cut on their body, and you'll inspect it, and you'll say no blood, and 5 minutes later, 20 minutes later, there's blood there. It's just because of the fur, because of the way you saw it, it wasn't bleeding yet. So it's always good to just go back and recheck and make sure that it wasn't further injured beyond what I could see. But that's the kind of things that happen. So first aid kit is paramount for the dogs. Being super aware of their body posture, because again, they work through injury, is always important. And just checking them to check them periodically is great also. So when I walk around, sometimes my assistant will water the dogs, depending on what I'm doing, trying to get all the filming correct. Sometimes I will make it a point to get off of the bike to check each dog, just to give a visual glance. I won't usually pick them up unless I suspect something, their paws, but I'll just do a visual to see if there's anything happened. Because if that bloodline on that nail gets cut, you'll see that right away. And if they moved at all funny, I'll pick their paws up and I'll go back and forth with it to see if they make any kind of face, to see if they make any kind of sound, to see if there's any kind of resistance, or it's just free flowing like normal. That just lets me know there's no pain in the paw, nothing going on there, etc. So depending on the circumstance, always great to investigate. If you don't travel a lot, always good to know if there are any veterinarian hospitals around. And that's the way I do it. Again, I believe my being cautious and proactive, and also having this team with me, has really helped keep the dogs super, super safe from a lot of common injuries. Also, I want to mention, because other people have asked me this, they say to me, when they see all that I do with the dogs, is there any issues with the dogs? They think it's an unnatural movement. So here on the electric dog sled on wheels, because of the tight footprint, they think, am I restricting the dogs too much, where it'll be inflict some kind of pain, or possible develop a bad posture or a bad movement with them. And someone saw me on the ATV with the spider arm, where it kind of arches over. So that was one time they looked and they thought the dog was moving awkwardly. And even sled dogs, by the way, we're coming off of Federal Hill, just keeping you posted on the video. Even sled dogs will give an awkward movement. They get excitement. It's like Cyan, she'll jump up and hopefully not tweak herself, because they can do that too by getting too excited. And I explained to them that all the different activities I do with the dogs will keep the dogs as least injury prone as possible, because they're working their bodies, they're working their limbs in different ways that traditionally, even now, sled dogs aren't going to experience all that different conditioning on their body. So I believe the variety of sports, the variety of terrain that I do with them, keeps them less injury prone, and also builds up these muscles and areas that they don't use. So they tell you, you go to a gym, yeah, you're curling for your biceps, but don't forget you got triceps, go on the other side and reverse curl. So again, it's like doing CrossFit sports. So I really think that helps. I did want to mention though, the only injury that I can recall that was anything, because we're going back to injuries real quick, can recall was one time with the dogs when I had the tether too long, and they were actually, and this is how I learned this, able to get in front of the tires. And because of that, they got excited, saw something. They knew the space, but they actually came in contact with the tire and it tore, nothing permanent, nothing tragic, but I got a stitch. I took her to the vet, and I got a stitch in one of the dogs and he said it was borderline a few stitches, whether she really needed it or not. But since I was there, he's going to do it. So it tweaked her dew claw. So again, that's being able to address that. Now that wasn't on an adventure. That was just by the home, me trying new equipment, and that can happen. Dogs, they saw deer, get excited out of nowhere and just bolt. And usually, that's why I say some of my dogs were fine past the wheels, but usually it's safest if they can't get in front, even though they respect the wheels. And I teach them that expect the unexpected. That one time when they see something, they try to cross over. So that's about the extent of any injury I've had for 30 years. So pretty amazing stuff. Now, and that's where I learned about the tourniquet, because I was talking to the vet and he's like, she is fine. It looked worse than it was. But if I used I did put a tourniquet because I stopped the blood. He said that there wasn't anything really there to worry about anyway, but that tourniquet was just what I went to and thought it was right. So we're coming on the harbor now, and this is, you can see a lot of the harbor has a lot of these brick pavers, so it's cool. I know a lot of cities, they do this. Baltimore was one of the first ones that I know of to have Harbor Place, which is like a harbor front with shops and stores and restaurants and all this good stuff. So because this was such an epic view, we stopped here to do a photo shoot, and a lot of times we were making more stops than the dogs are used to, which they didn't like. But even when they don't need the water, we put it in front of them to give them something to do, to try to buy a couple minutes for patience from them so we can take the right pictures and really absorb the moment, get the video shot right, etc. But we're right on the harbor, and I remember, actually it was before this, when we were going down a narrow way, and when the surface is really smooth, the dogs want to try to get over to where they want to get. They think they can have more control over the bike than they do. And I'm like, you're not taking me in the harbor today. It was way too cold. I've actually seen somebody fall into the harbor. They were drunk. I was in my younger years. I wasn't drunk, and I pulled them out of it. But Baltimore, if you ever get there, beautiful city, and just a great place to go. It's gets a bad rap, like a lot of cities, because there's crime, but there's crime everywhere. Knowing where to go and understanding when you go and doing the right thing can help you stay safe and enjoy all these areas have to offer. So we've got another question. My producer let me know. So this is from Keith. Hey, Keith, how are you? Great to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Does your Huskies live inside with you, or are they outside dogs? So my Huskies are all inside dogs, and some people have outside dogs. I don't know. I've always kept my dogs inside. I just and it's the same with the travel. Like, people that have big sled dog teams need to use what they call dog boxes. So it's like a trailer or a truck, maybe like a pickup truck, where all the dogs will have their own little coop, essentially. And when they go travel to where they're going to go sledding, they put the dog on the line and they put it back into the box when they're done. So my kind of dog motorsports, urban style mushing, because I'm a small team, I can do this. My dogs all travel with me inside the van or the truck we're using. So I don't know. It's just something about it that I just love them being with me. So someone once pointed this out to me. Again, this is why I love learning from others too. They said, what you do is so cool, because it's a cross between a sled dog team and between a real being a pet companion, etc. Not to say sled dog teams, they're almost all their owners, almost all the operators love their dogs on an individual basis. But when you have that big of a team, you have to have other housing aspects. Some people do. I've seen some people have them all live inside with them. But I'm kind of a cross between that. And that's what makes it so appealing to me. And that's why I usually stay with 4 dogs, because I can properly do everything I do with 4 dogs. Everything's built for 4 dogs. So they can be inside with me, that my house is perfect for the 4 dogs. I've got the perfect land for 4 dogs. I could handle more if I expand it. Luckily, I have the land. If I expanded the fencing per se, but the van, the travel accommodations would be harder to expand because there's only so much room in the van, and I have extra large crates, bigger than they need in the van. But we go on some long distance travel, as you're probably aware of. So I want to give them as much room as possible. In an accident, God forbid, which we've really never had, smaller is usually better, as long as it's safely a safe size for them, because it's going to keep them better contained. So in my local van that I use for the dogs, I had to have smaller crates. But if I expanded out any further, then I would push my equipment out. My trailer is already stacked, so I'd start having to look more for more room. So 4 dogs works for me. I can give them the same accommodations. They're my pets. They're my companions. It's like I said, that person said it best. It's kind of a hybrid dog sled team, because they're my pets, they're my companions, as well as they're working dogs. So thank you very much for the great question, Keith. I appreciate it. Their outside accommodations, by the way, they can come in and go. I have a dog door, depending on how I have it set up, because I can configure my yards. I have multiple fenced areas, because I know sometimes with different dogs, they can fight amongst themselves if I have to separate them. So they can come and go as they want. But I've always got, even though they can get inside pretty much any time, I've always got outside shelter for them. I feel like the more areas they have, the more they can play with each other. They chase each other outside in through these dog houses. So it's just like psychological enrichment. So that's why I do that. Thank you for the great question, Keith. Good to see you. Thank you for tuning in. So this is probably one of the most epic parts of the Baltimore Inner Harbor you'll see down, like I said, the brick paveways, because the Harbor Place, I believe, is to the left here or close by. That is, again, the Harbor Shopping area, which they're looking to redo, where it was like one year when they first built Harbor Place, I think it was in the 80s, they had more tourists there than they did in Disney World or Disneyland. So it was really a popular area. They're revamping it some. I love what they did. There's paddle boats in their inner harbor. There's usually historical ships. There's a submarine there for people to go and see. There's a lot to do. National Aquarium, Science Center. I mean, I could sit here for all day and probably name all these places. But right here, yeah, it looks like we're going past one of there's 2 pavilions, they call them, of Harbor Place. But again, now there's not much in them. They're looking to revamp it. But some of the bigger, tall buildings you see in the background are part of the skyline, of course. They're part of the main city there. We don't have a ton of them, but there's more than you see. So my co-pilot, I mentioned, Shaw Man, he just zoomed past me. Again, just making sure I'm clear, we're in a exposed area where anything can show up, meaning people-wise, dog-wise, etc. So he's just kind of leading the way and riding point, trying to set a little pace for us. So my producer let us know we have another question. And this one's from Keith again. Keith, thank you so much. I built a special dog area in my pickup that my huskies travel with me to go camping. The pair just lay down and sleep. My last female husky would stay up and help me drive. So cool. Yes, I love it. I love when we can build and we can accommodate our dogs in their own special way, what they like to do, to keep them with us as much as possible. Now, that brings me back to, I had a pickup too, and I had these special lines that, and I know they make them in harness the dog would wear, so the dog could ride in the back of the pickup, because they love doing that. They love getting the wind. Certain aspects you need to consider: their eyes. Some people will put, my dogs will wear goggles when I would ride them on a motorcycle. So certain aspects you need to keep into consideration for that. But my dogs love doing that. So yeah, in some ways, depending on the dog and the setup, you can accommodate them accordingly. It's so wonderful, and that's the bond. I know some people like our Chinese Crested in the in the vehicle. She doesn't like to be in anything contained, but we kind of put a seatbelt on her just to keep her safe, because you never know what could happen out there. And she's just a little thing, again, I mentioned. But they do have those seatbelt harnesses, which are kind of cool too. So thanks for that, Keith. Really appreciate that. Now we're getting close to what is known as the World Trade Center in Baltimore's version, not what was the World Trade Center in New York. But they have an observation floor. I forget what floor it's on. I've been there a few times, and you can really see from that perspective the whole city. So in the city, we also have Little Italy, which is as it sounds, a bunch of Italian restaurants that are really, I grew up there. I mean, I grew up going there, I should say. And one famous restaurant is Sabatino's, and it's still there from when I was a kid, and I'm like 58 years old now. So I grew up on that food, and some of the people are still there, if you can believe it or not. So when I was young, we work our way around this World Trade Center, and we're going to come into where the kids were. So I'm going to keep you with me before I end the broadcast, because it was kind of exciting. And I just love watching them get excited and hopefully learn good things about the dogs. Even though they're just seeing this, they might say, I want to do that when I get older. I want to learn more about sled dogs, etc. And we didn't expect this. Again, they were at the Science Center because it's a popular area. A lot of places, a lot of schools and educational centers will take field trips there. So we're coming around what, again, seems to be the World Trade Center. And you can see the National Aquarium behind us. And that's famous, kind of like the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. And I think these are the kids coming up on there. Let me just see here. And as we make it through, there's a few people. Yeah, some of the kids are walking away as we make it through those planters. See the kids gathering around. And I don't know if I get a good enough view of it, but Sean, you see National Aquarium, my co-pilot there just came around, and he was just telling the kids about what's going on because they were excited. And you can see school kids there. I mean, but literally to the right, which I didn't look there are probably what appear to be 100 or 200 kids. And then this goes all the way around to a submarine. So I'll post that video soon. I hope you get a chance to tune in. And that was shot by a couple different film cameras. So you'll really get, when we get the real video out there, not just my perspective, you'll really get a good view and understanding of some of the logistics, what it takes to do this, and some of the instances you might run into doing something like this. But everybody was so happy that we ran into and seemed to really enjoy it, taking pictures and commenting and even keeping their dog in a safe distance, but enjoying it with their dogs, etc. So yeah, there's just so many areas. That's why it was like eye candy, I call it, to rock and roll and to do stuff around here. I'm Wolf Driver. I'm on here for another, 20, 30 seconds if you got any last minute questions. If not, please be sure to tune in and check us out. We try to do this podcast, or what I call a VODCast, weekly, usually on Tuesdays, 11, 12 o'clock hour. By the way, if you're not watching this live, you're watching the rebroadcast, please don't hesitate to leave a comment or question. It's weird the way some of these social media platforms post these, but I try to get to everything because I want to keep good conversation going. And I know I've been a little slow lately by answering some of the questions just because we've been so busy and slow posting too, doing everything I'm talking about here. And I'm a one-man show when I'm posting this stuff. I do this all myself, online media, and I answer all questions myself. So, and I do that purposely. I used to have assistants that would help do this, but they, me answering a question and them answer a question, even though they know everything, is a totally different game. So we do have another last minute question here I will address. And this is from Haley Stevens. Came in late, but love this ride. Looked awesome. Have a great day. Thank you so much. This was really, like I said, an epic ride. And we've done Washington, D.C. We actually did the National Mall a few generations ago of Huskies. And we actually did that with that was my last generation, I think, with a big team, not as big as this team, and that's probably why we were able to get away with it. So the more people you bring, you have to start pulling permits, filming, etc. So we hope to do that in the future again. But having the dogs going past the Washington Monument and the dog sled on wheels and the Lincoln Memorial with views of the U.S. Capitol, the Smithsonian Museums. I mean, I was raised again in the Delmarva area, they call it, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, D.C., etc. So I visited these places as a kid, and to see them with my dogs is just a totally different perspective. And Baltimore City was like that, and because it seems to be so refined now, it was just so exciting. So that's one of my co-pilots too. That's Dan, and he's on this. That's actually a dog scooter with a motor made for dogs. I didn't do anything to it, but that's made to be like more like scooter joring, they call it, where the line's out in front. It's a rope. I couldn't do any of that kind of scootering or biking this day, because the dogs will be all over the place. Even if you have a good lead sled dog keeping the line tight, they're going to meander left or right, and they could get into somebody's lane. So it's not fair to do. And I really wouldn't be following proper rules, protocol, etc. So you can see Cyan. She's done waiting. We were trying to let everybody get in place because we're getting ready to go past the submarine. So been on air for a while now. It's been an hour show. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm Wolf Driver. Please don't forget dogdocumentary.com. If you haven't gone there, you can get a lot of insights to a lot of what I'm talking about. And we're all over the place right now because my team wants to travel. So I don't know where we're going to wind up next. I can't even talk about some of the stuff. We did Norfolk before Baltimore, which is the largest naval base in the world. We didn't do the naval base, but we went through the harbor, which looks a lot like Baltimore. And we went over the South Norfolk Jordan Bridge, which is it is a mile long, and one of the most epic bridges I've crossed. It was at sunset. I mean, that was epic. I got so much stuff, and I would love to post all this, but I haven't got a chance. So stay tuned for some exciting stuff. It is going into spring now, so the dogs won't be doing as many miles, though we'll be active with shorter trips, but we might travel further because we can spend more time in the van. So hopefully on that travel time, I'll get more time to post some of the epic stuff. Everything's been epic recently. I'm Wolf Driver. Have a great day. Thank you so much again for tuning in. Please check us out. Please subscribe to me if you don't, and give me a shout out whenever you have a chance.